You have driven past 1,000 of them and never once saw a home. A guard booth at a shuttered factory, a sentry box outside a closed base, a parking shack on a long automated lot, tiny boxes scrapped by the thousands, treated as junk. Across this country, Americans are dragging them home and turning them into $150 tiny houses for homeless veterans, the people who stood watch for the rest of us and came back to nothing. Start with why that is even necessary, because the number should stop you cold. On a single night in January 2024, almost 33,000 American veterans were homeless. Nearly 14,000 of them were completely unsheltered, sleeping in cars, in parks, on sidewalks, in the doorways of the country they swore to defend. Now, in fairness, that number is the lowest it has been since they started counting back in 2009, down more than half since 2010. And that progress is real, and it is worth saying out loud because it proves this problem can actually be solved. But here is the hole nobody likes to talk about. A government review found that over 4 years, more than 170,000 veterans were never even referred to the main housing voucher program that exists specifically to help them, mostly because the very offices meant to do it were understaffed. And for 150,000 of those men and women, the system could not even say why they were missed. 20 years ago, 3 out of every 10 homeless people in America were veterans. Sit with that. The people we put on recruiting posters and thank you at ball games were, for years, a third of the bodies sleeping on the street. And the reasons they end up there are not the lazy story people tell. It is the things they carried home, the injuries, the post-traumatic stress, the hard fall from a world of total structure into a civilian life with none. It is a rent that has doubled while a disability check stayed flat. These are not men and women who failed. They are men and women who served and then fell through a gap the size of a canyon. That is not a personal failure. That is a system with holes in it. The official answer is a good one on paper, a strategy called housing first, which says you put a person in a stable home before anything else, then bring the counseling and the care and the job help to them once they have a door to close. It works. The trouble is simply that there is never enough of it, and never enough hands to deliver it fast enough, so thousands of veterans wait in the cold while the paperwork crawls. And into that gap between what works and what we actually fund, ordinary Americans have started to step with a tool almost nobody expected. Here's the thing almost nobody realizes about a guard shack. It is the only structure in America that is mass-produced, straight from the factory, for the comfort and the survival of exactly one human being, around the clock, in every kind of weather there is. Think about what that job actually demands, and therefore what these booths come with as standard equipment. Insulated walls, an insulated floor, an insulated ceiling, an insulated steel door with a deadbolt, insulated glass windows on all 4 sides because a guard has to be able to see out, a through-wall heating and air conditioning unit because a guard has to survive a July afternoon and a January night in that same little box, a 100-amp electrical panel and outlets already wired in and waiting, a built-in counter and desk, and the entire thing is bolted onto a forkliftable steel base, engineered in many cases to stand up to winds of 180 miles an hour. It is built to take a beating, too, shrugging off the weather and the years long after a tent or a tarp would have rotted away. A brand new one of these costs anywhere from $8,000 to $45,000. Read that again and let it land. It is, in every single way that actually matters, a finished, insulated, climate-controlled, one-person tiny home that already exists, complete, today. We have just decided not to see it as one, run down the list of what a person actually needs to survive a winter indoors, the exact list that makes building a tiny home expensive, and a guard shack already checks off nearly every box. A sealed and insulated shell, a weatherproof roof, a real door, light, power, and a way to heat and cool the air. Someone already solved all of it to a commercial standard, and then we threw the answer in a scrapyard. We look at it and see a parking booth. A veteran with the right eyes looks at it and sees a bedroom with a lock. So where does that $150 come from? It comes from what this country does with these boxes once it is finished with them. When a military base closes, when a factory finally shuts its gates, when a parking company automates its lots and lays off the attendants, those booths instantly become a problem. Nobody wants. They are heavy, they are bolted down, and hauling them away costs real money, so they get scrapped for their metal, auctioned off for pennies on the dollar, or simply handed to the first person willing to clear them off the lot. A welder with a trailer, a veterans group with a flatbed, a church with a pickup truck and a few volunteers can take a unit that costs tens of thousands of dollars off a closing site for almost nothing. The $150 is not the price of the booth at all. It is roughly what it costs to rescue one and fit it out. The diesel for the trailer, a sheet of plywood, a few fittings. Because the expensive part, the engineering and the insulation and the wiring that would bankrupt anyone building a tiny home from scratch, was already paid for at a factory years ago. And all over the country, that is exactly what is happening. Volunteers, retired tradesmen, and veterans helping other veterans are pulling these boxes out of scrapyards and off of dead lots and finishing them into small, dignified homes, often grouping them together into little villages built around one single purpose: getting a vet off the street and behind a door that locks. And there is no shortage of supply. The country is dotted with shuttered bases, dead industrial parks, and automated lots, each one leaving its booths behind. A movement does not need a factory when the factory's already built the product decades ago and then walked away from it. It just needs people willing to go pick it up. And the fit out really is that cheap, because the booth has already done all the hard work for you. Here is the blueprint, in the order that matters. First, you seal and check the insulation, except it is already insulated on all 6 sides, which is a head start almost no other tiny home in the world ever gets to begin with. Second, you tear out the guard's desk and put in a bed and a small fold-down table, because the box was already sized for one person to spend an entire shift inside it. Third, you handle power and you have 2 easy roads. Tie into that existing 100-amp panel wherever there is a hookup, or run a single salvaged solar panel and a battery and go completely off-grid. No utility, no bill, no meter anyone can shut off. A small panel and a couple of batteries can light the place, charge a phone, and run that climate unit on the mild days. Fourth, you keep the water dead simple at this size: a jug and a basin or a self-contained composting toilet. Nothing that has to wait on a city connection. Fifth, you add a small, safe heat source, and this part is not optional, real ventilation to go with it. And then the little building does exactly what it was engineered to do. One person, sealed inside an insulated one-person space, throws off enough body heat to carry a real share of the load all by themselves. That same 100 watts of warmth every human body radiates just by being alive, finally trapped and kept instead of thrown away into the cold. Add it up, and the math is almost insulting in how simple it is. The shell that would cost tens of thousands new, rescued for the price of the tow. The insulation, the windows, the wiring, the climate unit, already there, already paid for. The bed, the solar panel, the composting toilet, the heater, the carbon monoxide alarm, a few $100s of basic gear, much of it donated. Insulated shell, one person size, off-grid ready, a warm, dry, lockable, dignified home for the cost of a tank of gas and a single weekend of work, where the open market would have charged a fortune. Quick question before the next part, and I want you to actually answer it. If you know a veteran who served, came home, and got nothing close to what they were promised, say their name in the comments right now and let them be seen. And hit subscribe, because what comes next is the part that can get one of these little homes bulldozed, and the veteran living inside it fined for the crime of having quietly solved his own problem. But first, picture what this actually means for one single human being. Picture a veteran, call him Mike, who spent 8 months folding himself into the front seat of a car every night, who learned which parking lots the police would leave alone and which ones they would not, who kept his uniform clean in a duffel bag because it was the last proof he had that he used to be somebody. Now picture the first night he steps into one of these finished booths, and it is his. A real bed instead of a reclined seat, a lamp he can switch on, a heater he can actually turn up, 4 walls, a roof that does not leak a drop, and a door that locks, that he holds the only key to. For a man who lived for years inside discipline and structure in a clear place in the world, and then lost every bit of it. That locking door is not a small thing. It is the line between merely surviving and being a person again. He can close it, and for the first time in the better part of a year, nothing and no one can get to him while he sleeps. He can leave in the morning and know his things will be there when he gets back. That is what a home actually is, stripped down to its bones, a space the world cannot simply walk into. And here is the part that should put a lump in your throat. The structure that now shelters him was built, originally, for a sentry. For someone to stand watch through the long, cold hours so that everyone else could sleep safe in their beds. We are taking the box built for the one standing guard, and we are handing it to the men and women who once stood guard for all of us. There is a kind of justice in that you almost never get to see, and it costs the country almost nothing to deliver. We are not inventing anything. We are just refusing, finally, to throw 2 things away at once: the box and the person who could live in it. Now here is what nobody posting the feel-good version of this story ever tells you, and it is the part that decides whether the home survives the year. There are 2 ways this goes wrong, and you have to beat both of them. The first is the law, and the irony of it is brutal. A guard shack is tiny, somewhere between 24 and 64 square feet of floor. But the National Building Code says a legal home has to have at least 1 habitable room of 120 square feet, and countless towns set their minimum legal dwelling size far higher than that, at 400, 600, even 1,000 square feet or more. Which means that simply parking one of these on a random lot and living in it is almost everywhere in this country against the law. It is too small to legally count as a house. So the same nation that left the veteran on the sidewalk can turn right around, declare the dignified little home he built illegal, fine him, and haul it away. And thanks to a recent Supreme Court decision, cities are now free to ticket and even arrest people simply for sleeping outside in the first place. That is exactly why the version of this that actually works, the version that actually lasts, is never a lone vet hiding a booth behind a warehouse. It is organized. It is veterans, nonprofits, and whole communities doing the slow, unglamorous work first, getting the land properly zoned, winning the variances, building sanctioned villages where these homes are legal, connected to real power and waterscar, and permanent. Done that way, the booth stops being a thing to hide and becomes an address, the kind you can put on a job application, the kind that lets the rest of a life finally restart. The second danger is physical, and it is the silent one. In a box that's small and that tightly sealed, any open flame or any generator run indoors for heat will quietly fill the space with carbon monoxide, a gas with no color, no smell, and no warning at all, that can kill a sleeping man in a matter of hours. So the rules are simple, and you do not break them. Use only a sealed electric or a properly vented heat source, never an open flame. Keep a carbon monoxide alarm running at all times, no exceptions. Because it is a $15 device that stands between a cold night and never waking up. Build in real ventilation, even when every instinct in the cold screams at you to seal it up tight. And get that old wiring and that old climate unit inspected before you ever trust your life to either one. The dignity of the home is completely real. The zoning and the safety work are the boring things that keep it standing and keep the person inside it breathing. And that, in the end, is the part that should actually stay with you. Not just how clever it is, how much we waste, and who exactly we waste it on. Every single year, thousands of these finished, insulated, weatherproof, one-person shelters get crushed into scrap metal while the very people who serve this country fold themselves into cars to sleep. The boxes already exist. The skills to convert them are not exotic. The land exists somewhere. Not one of the genuinely hard pieces is actually missing. A homeless veteran is not helpless, and he is not a failure, no matter how the world treats a man once he is down. The same hands that learn to fix a truck in a war zone or run a checkpoint at 3 a.m. are more than capable of turning a scrap booth into a home, given half a chance and a patch of legal ground to put it on. He served. He came home. He just needed a door that locks, and a country willing to admit out loud that he was worth one. The Americans dragging these booths out of scrapyards are not waiting around for permission to decide that he is. They looked at a box built for somebody standing watch, and they handed it to the people who once stood watch for all the rest of us. The question was never whether we could house them. We obviously can. We have the boxes, we have the hands, and we have the room. The only real question left, the one this whole movement keeps quietly asking, is whether we decide they are worth it. Built for a century, now home for the vets who stood watch for us. Subscribe for the next one.